All right, we're back. It's Comp 2007, and it's week 12, lesson 12, part 3, and we have another set of challenges for you guys. Okay, in here, what I want you to do now is we've already made an error page. Here's our error page. I want you to make a 404 page, right? So a specialized 404 page, right? While I'm typing. I'm also going to talk about ELMA in a second and some stuff around the 404 pages right now, what it is. But ELMA, there's another margin we're going to add in that gives us our error reporting a little better than this thing here, what it does here. Instead of having a custom file, it's actually going to show us our errors, right? So how do I make a custom 404 page? It's like an error page, yeah? But what it is, it's going to say page not found. That's the error, right? So look what it says here. Here's my custom errors on redirect. If it's something weird, it's going to take us to error page, right? What about if it's not something weird? If it's just a page not found? We could have our custom 404 page. So how do we do that? Well, I'd probably do the same thing as before, right? Add this into your project, please, before you upload. This is part of your practice, so you can refer to this, hint, hint, on your exam. That's what this whole thing is for. You get a few marks, plus gives you a little reference for where you look for your exam for error handling, all right? So right-click, and I'm going to go Add, and I'm going to go Web Forms with Master Page. Here it is. And inside here, I'm just going to name this thing 404, right? And I'm going to use my default master. And I've got my 404 page in here, and we're just going to say something in here. For now, we're just going to put an H1 tag with a, page not found. Something like that. So we know that it's a 404 page. Well, actually, we say 404 page not found. So our custom 404 page. You can put whatever you want in there, all right? And typically, there's some really nice things that you can find in there, like something went wrong, it broke, or whatever. Now that's our custom 404 page, but our error page right now, it goes to our error page if it's anything else, like if it's some index, whatever, some weird error that actually is generated on your page, goes there and creates an error log. All right. So let's go back and see how this works. If I go to my, we don't need this anymore. And we don't need this anymore, or this. I'm not going to use my utility function. And here's my error page, ASPX. We've all done all these things, but in my web.config, if you notice, I've got my 404 page, right? My 404 redirect is error page. I want to change this to 404.aspx. I just made that, right? Might as well change it. And I might as well do that for this other weird thing that I've got on for anything else that comes in from other pages, right? So 404 ASPX. Let's see what that does now. That's the simplest way. So there's two pages now. There's an error page, right? And then when it comes to some page that doesn't exist, like this one, it takes me to my custom 404 page not found page, right? But if I go to some other weird error, like some other crazy ass error that I can't predict, that might be from my code, it's not going to break my site. That's the point. It won't break my site. It'll take me into another page. If I produce an error in my code, it'll save me, right? It won't take me so that the user sees all my crazy rough errors and gets an idea of how to break my site. I don't want them to know that. He's just going to see, hey, this is a weird error. It's only going to be available for local users like me. Okay, that's the way you do two pages. So I want you to add that in. So you've got your custom 404 page. I'm going to ask you about this on the exam. And I'm going to ask you for your, default error handling page, any other error, right? How do we do that? Okay, cool. Let's go back to this stuff. We're almost done. We did this custom error stuff. We've got our. Did it work? So that's one thing I want to kind of turn on. There's another thing I want to talk about, which is we talked about application level error handling, right? Which we can do as well. We have this custom error page. But what I want to do now is I want to skip down to the last section here on this page where it adds in some error logging, right? And what we want to do with error logging is a little bit more advanced error logging than what we have right now. So it says add code level error logging. We can do that. But there's this thing called Elma. Not Elmer, Elma, all right? And how do you get that? Within Visual Studio, let's do this. Let's go to, from the Tools menu, select the Library Package Manager or Manage NuGet Packages. In other words, I'm going to close all this down for a second and stop debugging. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to right-click and I'm going to go to NuGet, Manage NuGet Packages. And in the top here, I'm going to type in Elma, like this. And if you notice, there's this one little link here, Elma with initial configuration for getting started quickly, it says. Error logging module, that's what this thing is, right? Okay, let's keep looking. So I did this, right? It says you'll need to have an internet connection to download the package. In the select projects dialog, select it all, whatever project. Close, if Visual Studio requests that it reload any files, yes to all. And then, right, viewing the Elma log, once it's created, and if we've established everything correctly, right, we can go to elma.axd, right, elma.axd, and find out it'll print out this log for us, which is a very nice log. Let's try this out. So here's Elma install. It's going to install some dependencies. I'm going to close, right, and it says, I'm going to say yes to all. So something's changed now. And my web.config, it says, let's take a look at this. A new HTTP handler has been configured in your application for consulting the error log in its feeds. It is reachable at Elma AXD under your application root. If, for example, your application is deployed on blah, 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 then you go to this site. And that's how you reach it. Okay? Now, we want to be able to secure these pages so that only admin users can see this, right? We did this last time. So we're going to add in some security features to make this go. All right? So how are we going to do that? So first of all, let's run this thing. So here's my page, and I have an error, right? It takes me to my 404 page, and if I go back home and I go to Elma, so Elma.axd, and press enter, it gives me this, which is a very cool page, right? So it's built-in error logging in 2 steps, like one click, and all the wonderful things we want are right here. So there's a whole section on securing Elma and all this kind of stuff because you don't want this error logging to be available to anybody. We're not going to cover that piece, but the great thing about this is that it's really good information for you as an administrator to see that what kind of errors are there, and it allows you to see your error logs without looking at your TXT files. Okay, so really, really cool functionality, Elma. And if I ask you to put together an error log on the exam, what it would look like, right? What you do, what's the best place to go? What do you search on NuGet for whatever? Remember, it's not Elmer, it's Elma. Huh? Oh, I know, it's terrible. But anyways, I think it's called error logging something or another. That's what it stands for, some kind of acronym for it. Now it says powered by Elma version 1.214, whatever, and it's under the Apache license and so on. And you can customize what this page looks like. Let's take a look. If I go to stop debugging, and if I see what I got just now, I got my web config. Nothing really comes out here. This is all my regular stuff, right? My content has my CSS and everything else, so it's not in there. My logic has that exception utility that we put in there just for our custom R error handling that we go to. Typings is there, so where does it exist? Well, if you look at references, right? And you see that there's an Elma package that in there, in my Elma package itself, has all the information for how to create those pages. So you could modify them, but it's going to take you a bit of time and effort. Otherwise, you need to secure it. So how do I secure my pages? If you look at securing pages in Elma, if I look at the wiki for that, so let's see if I can go there. No, let's just copy and paste. Sorry, I'm using my Mac to do the PC thing. So let's go there and see what it tells us really quickly. We're not going to do this exercise, but it basically tells you what to do. And if you notice, it says Elma. You make a section called Elma security allowance. Allow remote access is 1, right? Which means that that's true. Otherwise, is disabled. So if you disable it, only local access is available, but remote access is unavailable. And it also tells you what to do in terms of putting in some information on how to use the authorize role, right, inside Elma to lock down the thing so only admin users can access it if there's an admin user. Right? And again, if you look at the web.config file, there's lots of changes that have been going on. Elma has, the whole module has put in all kinds of additional pages, and this is all you need to do. Take a look at this. Here's our authorization, right? If I put allow roles equal to admin, and if I had an authorization module present, like for example, if I was using identity, or if I was using any other kind of authorization system, if it was enabled, right? Once I have that going, then I can simply put authorization, so it's only Elma, only this user. User role would be admin. Okay, so let's just undo this, and away you go. Now you'd have to add that other role up here from configuration authorization section in. Like you have to put that authentication on, turn it on, just like we do from our the other pieces that we do with our web config. Okay, that's all you have to put in there. Once you put this in there and you have a role that's admin or a user, you can put users equal admin, an admin user. They're the only people that can look at this. That's how you'd lock it down. Okay, we've done a couple things so far up until today. Then again, this would be like the last teaching class for us to, with reality. Next week we're doing presentations, and we're also doing some high-level review. If we have some time to do review, I want to talk about that probably at the beginning, right? But what if we've been talking about these custom options here? Let's take a look at that solution from scratch. If I was going to go File New, if I go File New Project, and I want to do a new ASP.NET web application, which I'm just going to call it like, just leave it as is, Web Application 1 for now, and press OK, and then click Web Forms, like the actual application itself. If you notice, if you were going to start from here, you have an authentication option that's built in. Right? If I go change authentication, you can see that there's different kinds of authentication levels. One of them is individual user accounts, organizational accounts, Windows authentication accounts, all kinds. And press OK. If I press OK again, right, and run this thing, it generates a scaffold for me right away. So we talked about scaffolding before, right, and how to do a scaffold. But this is the new ASP.NET Web Application Framework that it gives you. So it gives you all this stuff from scratch. So we haven't touched about this or talked about this at all up until today, right? Well, here's a good thing that what it does. If I was to run this thing as is, what does it come out with out of the box, right? Now we know how to do a lot of configuration, right? It comes up with this, right? So if you were to start off an application like this, you notice it comes up with bootstrappy stuff. It has this whole thing. It's ASP.NET. It also has the ability for us to log in with identity, right? You can also set up another service, right, if you want to do that. And if you don't know what it sets up, it actually creates, I'm going to stop here and so I can show you, right now it has a bunch of different things here for how to log in, log out. It's all got built-in scripts. And if you're like, hey, I don't understand how this all functions and works, well, that's okay, because you and I all know right now how to create stuff like, look, jQuery. Now this is an old version of jQuery that I've got in here with Bootstrap and so on. It's all pre-configured for you with some basic pages. So now that you know ASP.NET, you could take this basic scaffold and remove things from it or add things to it instead of starting from scratch, right? So a lot of times we've shown you the other way, which is starting from scratch. We're always starting from scratch, but you don't have to, right? This gives you a model that it gets you going pretty quickly. One thing that you'd note is if you want to host your account information online, you do have a default connection here, and take a look where it's going to go. It's going to try and add a new source to LocalDB, right? LocalDB version 11 for me does not exist. Hang on. It does not exist, my version 11, right? So for me to make this work, I have to look at Server Explorer as an example, or SQL Server Object Explorer. And if you notice, I don't have SQLDB or LocalDB version 11. I have LocalDB Projects 12, right? That's what I have. So I'd have to kind of use that link. And what I can do is I can copy this link, Just FYI, and you'd have to look here for yourself. You may or may not have this, right? So you may have encountered this problem like I do. Copy this link, and then inside here where it says version 11, right, I replace it with this, projects 12. And then what it does, it says, hey, go to my data directory, and then add in this file that says ASP.NET Web Application 1, right, and create this MDF file, right? Here's my my custom MDF. Now, this MDF document is actually the database that your user authentication is going to go in. But let's say you're like me and you want to connect to Azure, right? Then you take your Azure authentication credentials and replace your default connection with your Azure connection, right? Everything the same except for you'd have your username and password in here again for the Azure server, right, which would be over here. And now you're pointing to security that's online. By the way, the term integrated security means that you're looking for Windows authentication security in this particular case, because I'm in my local DB. So if I'm authenticated, it's going to just let me in. If I want to log into Azure, right, and have Azure level authentication, I've got to connect to some Azure database. Let's do that, right, to show you how that works. So I already have a database. I don't want to connect to a database. And this is a new file that I've never even touched, right? So yes, I can do a new file here, local database, that will appear in app data. That's where it'll actually sit in. That new MDF, the new database will actually be created and sit in here, right? But if I stop debugging and if I look at my SQL Server Explorer, I do have a couple of databases that I have I've already created on Azure. I'm just going to expand this so it's much bigger so you can see. I have one called COMP2007 security from last week, right? And if I open this up, I have some databases, right, which should say COMP2007 security. That's actually live on Azure right now. And I also have a table, right, for all my security tables that I get from identity, right? Remember, we did this last week, this little thing here, COMP2007 security. Yeah? So if you notice, when it pulls in, it's going to grab all the tables from the identity, but I need to add in this information. So when I log into my MO06UFCTH7 database, whatever it's called on Azure, I have the credentials to log in, right? So these are all the contact memberships, profiles, and all that kind of stuff, right? I also did it last week for the other class, but I did it in a different way for the advanced class, for COMP2026. I did the same thing. So here's COMP2026, and I've got my tables in there. Here's my tables, right? And in my tables, I'm going to show you the difference. Here's application, right? Contact membership roles, profiles, users, and user and roles, right? So again, I have a table, a database, and I want to connect online. I don't want to connect locally, and every time I connect, right, I connect to the one online. That's the better solution, right? Because if I have a local database, either I have two options. I can migrate my local database online afterwards, or I'm going to have two databases here, right? So here's the different things. Here's what membership looks like, right? And here's what identity looks like. There's two different things. This one uses identity. So let's connect to this COMP3026 database for identity, right? So I'm going to kind of go in here, and I'm going to go to Properties. And if you notice, Properties has the data source built in. I'm going to expand these things and make this really small for a second. It's going to be annoying, right? But if you notice right here, I've got this whole thing going on, right? Where I have this whole structure, right? And I'm going to copy all this stuff, right? Making sure that I got it all. And again, you can do a couple things. You can go, kind of double click and then copy all this thing in here. And once I've got this connection string, this is the connection string for this database, right? I'm going to go back over here, unpin this thing, and kill this connection string the way it is with my new data, right? So I'm going to kind of put it in here all the way to the end, right? And Control V. All right. So this is my new data source, right? And this is my integrated security false, means it's not a Windows server, right? Here's my user ID and my password. It's not there, right? Now I've got a funky password I'm going to use, right? think it's some weird combination of characters and numbers. Some weird things. And once I've got in there, I'm going to run this thing now. And this time, if I've done things correctly, it's going to connect to my new data source online, right? So when I log in and register, here's my email or password, I should be able to log in. Let's register for the first time. Let's register as a new user. And I'm going to register my email as mark@example.com. And my password is going to be, M, lowercase m, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then same thing, capital M, lowercase m, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see if that's good enough. Might not be. No. Let's try that again. A non-digit, right? So capital M, lowercase m, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, exclamation mark. Capital M, lowercase m, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, exclamation mark. And then register. And when I do that, it connects to my database that's online, if I've done things correctly, because I've modified my web.config, accesses Azure, and bingity bam, I'm on. So I don't have a local database anymore. It's part of my remote database that I have on. If you notice, hello mark example.com. So I'm using the same user authentication database. I don't have to make a new one. So if you're migrating, this is a great opportunity. You don't have to make a whole new database. You have a database, it's already built, you have the connection strings ready to go. You take that connection string, you add it into your stuff, you have your username and password, and now you have access to that whole big database, not just for authentication, but for everything else. Okay, so just FYI. So now my application is connected online, and I can add other data, all this other stuff. I can create more scaffolding in there by scaffolding my data, adding new views. Like for example, this database also has some kind of view for another model that I have for my database, right? That does, I have a to-do list that I created online with this thing, like we did last time, right? So this is what this will allow me to do. I can connect to it and get that data, scaffold out the views for my to-do list, for my model, by creating my access to this entity framework, ADO.NET data model. Okay, and that's it for me, really, in a nutshell. I'm going to stop recording now, and I'm going to show you guys for another minute or two my setup on Windows 10, right? So you guys see how that looks. Okay. Sorry for the guys who are watching online.